Godzilla is now in New York City.
Monster 01 and 02, commence the attack.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Stomp This Way. Sitting here with Dylan and Andrew's back.
Hello?
Oh no.
For good or bad. But today we got a nice little treat. We are going into the world of Stephen King for a little detour from our usual coverage.
Coverage? What are we, the news?
Yes, we're the news. We're the Kaiju news. Not really. I'm pretty sure that's already a podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway. But yeah, we're going to record this episode over this film we just watched, which is The Mist. Or if you want to go by the alternate title that I listed, Stephen King's The Mist.
A Frank Darabont film.
A Frank Darabont film.
According to the poster.
Yes, love the posters. And speaking of Frank Darabont, you guys may know him as the director of The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile, or as a co-creator on TWD.
The Walking Dead.
The Walking Dead. TWD. So a talented filmmaker, I think, is definitely a fair...
Him and Stephen King must get along really well.
They must do, because in fact, after directing the first two aforementioned films, King granted Darabont the rights to make The Mist because Darabont wanted to make a a more sci-fi, bloody Stephen King adaptation. So King was like, well, here you go. And Darabont went up to Paramount and was like, hey, give me the money. And Paramount was like, yeah, we'll give you a little bit. Darabont wanted to make the film in black and white, but the studio wanted it in color for a wider audience. And so a black and white version was included on the Blu-ray release. I've not seen it. It might be interesting. I don't know. It's a film that I think would work in black and white, since it's almost in black and white anyway with this color palette we got going on.
Very washed out.
But
we'll talk about that.
Anyway, the film has an intentional documentary style feel about it, as Darabont hired a TV camera crew who were working on a TV show at the time to film it, because he wanted that kind of low budget docudrama style filming, which I think works pretty well. And Darabont actually wrote an opening scene showing a storm damaging the portal, but the scene was not filmed, most likely due to the studio thinking it was too expensive. But we'll talk about whether I think that scene was necessary or not when we get into the plot, I guess. But a bit of box office information. This was released on November 21st, 2007. Guys, this came out like almost 13 years ago, and I remember when it came out. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. I remember when it came out. I didn't watch it, though.
I think Dad probably took us to the theater to watch this. Probably. 13 years ago. Made for a budget of $18 million. Made around $25.5 million domestically, and worldwide made a total of about $57.5 million. So
Turned to small profit.
Turned to small profit, probably. So, it is what it is. But anyway, we're going to listen to the trailer, and then we're going to come back. We're going to list off the cast and the crew, and we're going to read off a plot summary, and then we're going to tell you our thoughts on this here Stephen King adaptation. So see you in a bit.
Whoa. Mom, Dad, you got to come see. The boathouse is all bashed. You just got to... Come on. Whoa.
Having spoken, the doomsayer departs.
Come on.
Why don't you get Billy dressed? I'll take him into town with him. Hit the store before it gets all bought out.
How'd you folks hold up in the storm?
Big insurance day.
Sorry to hear that.
What's going on?
It's death. working in the mist! Shut the doors! Shut the doors!
The only way we're going to help ourselves is to seek rescue.
Tie this around your waist.
Or four.
It'll let us know you got at least 300 feet.
There's nothing out there. Nothing in the mist.
What if you're wrong?
Then I guess the joke would be on me.
It is time to take sides. Read the good book. It calls for blood.
Guys, I hear something.
Are those bugs?
Not like any I've ever seen.
The entire front of this store is plate glass.
Promise you won't let the monsters get me.
What are you guys messing with up there?
I thought that there were other dimensions. They wanted to try and make a window.
Well, maybe your window turned out to be a door.
Who she's gonna sacrifice to make it all better?
We want the boy.
You try it.
Kill him!
All right, we're back. This film is directed, as we mentioned, by Frank Darabont, written by Frank Darabont, based on the novella by Stephen King, music by Mark Isham, although we will talk about that in the music section, and I think most importantly, the Host of Seraphim is a song provided by the band Dead Can Dance. Effects by Greg Nicotero and Everett Burrell, and starring Thomas Jane, Marcia Gay Harden, Laurie Holden, Andre Braugher, Toby Jones, William Sadler, Jeffrey DeMunn, Francis Sternhagen, Alexa Davalos, and Nathan Gamble.
After a thunderstorm damages their homes, David Drayton takes his son Billy and his neighbor Brent Norton to the local grocery store for supplies. While they are there, the town is swallowed up by a thick fog, and it quickly becomes evident that there are strange creatures that dwell in the mist. After a tentacled creature kills one of the employees, the townspeople are convinced that they need to stay inside and barricade themselves in. But as the days wear on, tensions grow high. The deeply religious Mrs. Cramity begins preaching about the end of days and gathers a large following. After a few ill-fated ventures outdoors, Miss Cramity and her followers sacrifice one of the military men who've been holed up in the store to the creatures outside. The next day, David and a small group of people attempt to leave the store, but Miss Cramity stops them and threatens to sacrifice Billy and a local school teacher. One of the store employees shoots the woman, and David's group scrambles to his car. After driving south for several hours, David runs out of fuel, and in order to prevent them from suffering horrible deaths at the hands of the creatures outside, David puts a bullet in all the members of his group, including his son. There are no bullets left for him, and as he stumbles out of his car, the military arrives, clearing the mist and killing the creatures within. David drops to his knees, screaming in agony as credits roll.
Not to correct you, but I think it's Mrs. Carmody.
Oh, whatever.
You said Cramity.
Cramity. She'll be all right.
But anyway, there were also some typos in there that I noticed.
Yeah, it's okay.
But you know, I did this like 11:30 last night after a Seagram or two. So leave me alone. But anyway,
I got what you meant though from some of your typos, so that's what matters.
Yeah, that's what matters. See, we've been doing this long enough. We got synergy here.
Carmody.
Oh,
she got some karma coming to her.
She did. But getting into this movie.
Well, first off, you both have seen this.
I have seen this.
I have never seen this.
You've never seen this.
I have heard and read things about it. I knew the ending was very controversial, and I knew that a lot of people really disliked the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And from what you've told me, it varies quite differently from the end of the book.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, I knew mostly the ending. Something. I mean, I didn't realize he killed his family or the people with him or whatever.
Yeah.
But I knew like the mist cleared up or something like that, and something stupid happened. But
yeah, we'll definitely talk about the ending later. But yes, I have read the novella. It's been a while, so I don't remember the nitty gritty details. I do remember that the ending would differ quite a bit. I also remember that he did have a sexual relationship, or at least one sexual encounter with Laura Holden's character, in the movie, in the book, but they kept it platonic in the movie, which I think was the right choice, looking back on it. But
there's really no need for that. So
yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about it as we go through. But starting out, I mentioned that scene that Frank Darabont had written, but didn't get filmed, probably due to budgetary concerns, where we saw this thunderstorm at the beginning of this movie damaging their military portal. Do you think that scene would have been helpful or harmful to this movie?
I think it does perfectly well without. I think had you included that scene, you probably would have taken out some of the tension of the movie because it would have already established what was going on to a degree.
Yeah,
versus waiting to ease you into what's going on. I like that a lot better.
Yeah, actually, I agree. I think because we spent quite a bit of this time, this runtime, talking about Project Arrowhead and what does it mean. If we would have actually seen it at the beginning of the movie, I feel like I would not have cared as much.
Yeah, it would have taken a lot of the mystery and intrigue out of the movie.
So, and also, we see this. They stretch this budget thin as it is. I don't think they needed a bigger special effects driven scene to try to stretch it thinner. So, I actually think this movie is better without it. I'm glad that for whatever reason it didn't end up getting filmed. But getting into this movie, we commented as we got into it. It's pretty. We don't waste a lot of time. We see the thunderstorm. We see David drawing the painting of Roland Destain, whatever. The Roland from the Dark Tower novels, because they're all connected.
There's also a poster of The Thing in the background.
Yeah,
John Carpenter's The Thing. So
yeah,
fun times. Lots of references.
But the storm comes and it tears up their house and it crushes their lake house or their boat house, and it crushes their neighbor's car. His neighbor, Mr. Norton, who they don't get along, is established. So that forces a situation where he has to leave his wife at home, and he loads up his kid and Mr. Norton, and they go to the grocery store. And I think about 13 minutes in, we saw that the mist comes rolling up on the grocery store, which I'm glad. This is a 2-hour and 5-minute movie, so it's not a short movie, especially for a movie. I mean, when the plot is really simple when you think about it. They got to stretch that a pretty thin plot for 2 hours. But I like that we get right into it. We don't actually see a monster until I think I said about 25 minutes in.
25 minutes or something.
And then there's another about 25-minute break before we get the next monster attack. But actually, I'm going to say this movie I think is paced really well.
Yeah, it's paced really well. I mean, there's enough. I mean, granted, there's quite a few characters that we follow through the movie, and I until I read this plot summary, I don't think I could have told you half their names.
Yeah.
But I think even with the excess of characters, we still have enough character-driven moments and enough well-written dialogue that it keeps you intrigued and entertained throughout the movie. So
yeah, I'm going to say from a writing perspective, I mean, just trying to make logical sense, it would make logical sense. There's going to be a lot of people trapped inside a grocery store if a thing like this happens. So you have to you're stuck with a lot of characters. I mean, yeah, I think it's harmful.
Luckily, we don't spend a lot of time with a good chunk of them, but there are quite a few central characters that we've.
I think it does hurt that because we are so our attention is so divided, but it also helps. It gives you a body count, obviously. Although I wouldn't say that the body count for this movie is extraordinarily high.
4 or 5 people, and
4 or 5 people that we actually see die. Yeah, I mean there's some other off-screen implied deaths. I'm not going to ding this movie for having too many characters too hard because they're kind of stuck, and I think that it focuses, by the end of the movie at least, we focused on a few enough that I do. There are characters that I care about, even if I don't remember all of them.
I mean, at its core, I mean, this movie really is, I would say, for the most part, about David and his son.
It's David and his son, and Laura Holden's characters. I mean, the old lady that's the teacher or whatever. Yeah. Toby Jones's character, Ollie. And then of course Mrs. Carmody, who is the I would say the main antagonist of this film, and I really like of course this film thinking of the broad themes of it. It's about that humans can be just as bad as the monsters on the outside, and I like this film's its breakdown, its discussion of how quickly society crumble and how quickly people turn on each other when the going gets tough to clean the language up.
I mean, I guess we're kind of seeing that from a live perspective at the moment in time with the situations that are going on across the country. But
yeah, it is kind of a interesting kind of a microcosm of issues that we have going on right now, where we
have a a virus break out and we completely shut down our economy and all that kind of stuff. But,
and people start screaming at each other online, which people screaming at each other online no matter what. But I think I really like. I think this movie actually portrays this. I mean, you could very easily take this in a cheesy direction. But I think this movie, I mean, there is a couple of rough lines of dialogue here and there, but I think the acting is done really well.
Everyone does a really
And I think it's actually written pretty well, and I think they actually portray this largely on the back of some strong performances from, not a lot of stars in this movie, but a lot of really good character actors who are in a lot of stuff. I think they really carry this movie and
quite a few people in this who would go on and have some careers in TV.
The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Frank Darabont would just drag him over to The Walking Dead.
He's like, hey, you.
Melissa McBride and Laurie Holden, top of the list, obviously. And, a lot of character actors. Thomas Jane, I don't know who he is from other than this.
I don't know what else I've seen him in. I mean, I'm sure we have, but just don't
probably, he doesn't scream leading man. Because, let's be honest, to be a strong leading character in a Hollywood movie, you really have to be one of two things. You either have to be immensely physically attractive, which he is not, or you have to be really, really, really good at acting, which he's not.
He's not a bad actor.
I'm going to say, we'll get to the end maybe a little bit later, but I don't know if he completely sells the end to me, but he's not a bad actor. I don't think he's the strongest actor in this movie, but he does good enough to carry this movie for what it is. But kind of talking about all the character actors, I like the way Frank Darabont kind of filmed this is kind of a low budget kind of docudrama style filming technique. I think it actually works for this movie. And I like Mrs. Carmody. Like, I don't like Mrs. Carmody, but I think that she
her character's really well written.
Marcia Gay Harden. I think she
pulls off that character.
Pulls off
really
this
well.
Character of crazy because usually I'd be like, well, it's kind of being a little harsh on religion here, but if I'm being totally honest, I could probably think of a couple of people in my life who I could see going this bat crap crazy in a bad situation and going full revelations honest. And I like, how she slowly, or not slowly, I guess this really only takes place over a couple of days, they say. She quickly gathers followers as bad things keep happening. And, you could believe it happening, I think. It's just not that out of the realm of possibility. And
just the kind of things that people will buy into.
And you know what? This movie never explicitly proves her wrong if you think about it.
No, not necessarily.
So, I do wish, or I don't know if I wish, I wonder, did the people in the grocery store get out alive? We see Melissa McBride's character, though. She's at the beginning. She's like, oh, I got to get home to my kids. And she goes out by herself, and we see that she survives. But I wonder if the other people in this grocery store made it out or not. I don't think we see any of them on the vans later. But, I guess we need to talk about this ending. We've kind of talked about it already. Did this, I think when this movie first came out, most people generally liked it until the ending, and then the ending is very divisive. How did the ending, since you saw it for the first time, land for you?
Well, there's a word I want to say, but I'm not allowed to say it on this show.
Okay. I would have to bleep it.
If you'll bleep it, I'll say it.
Say it.
It really is. If you really think about it, he could have waited a couple more minutes, but he didn't know that situation. It's not a bad ending per se. Yeah. It's just. It's really messed up.
Yeah.
Do you think it works? Do you don't think it tanks the movie or anything?
I don't think it necessarily tanks the movie. Once you see the situation, if I were in that kind of situation, obviously you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
If that's your only possible way out, for all you know, this is going to be miles upon miles upon miles on the road. It could be taking over the whole country or whatever for all they know. And they're stuck in the middle of nowhere, no supplies, no food. They don't know what's out there. If that's your way out, that's your way out. That's the only way you can protect your son or your family or whatever you got going on. I can understand people being in that situation. It does suck once the military rolls up, and I feel for them. I'm like, oh man. Yeah. But I can understand why it's divisive, but I don't think it's a bad ending.
Yeah. No. I think it is a bit contrived. The timing.
I don't think that he sells how distraught he is at the end with his screaming. Yeah. I don't buy into his screaming very much, but
I do think the timing is a bit contrived that the military rolls up.
You're like,
really? But I will say I actually really like this is a very nihilistic movie, very dark and depressing, with lots of dark themes. I actually like the idea of the ending, and They actually, I think, do a decent job of, if you think back on the movie, of setting it up. There's a line that's kind of whispered in the movie earlier on where he's talking to his son as they're laying on the floor of the grocery store, and he's like, and his son tells him, "Make me a promise that you'll never let the monsters get me." Well, he doesn't let the monsters get him, and this is how he thought the only way to carry out that promise. I actually like the ending quite a bit. I think it fits with the tone of this movie, and I think it's really depressing, and I like the look on the other actors' faces, because I think Thomas Jane is frankly the weakest actor left alive, but I think the other actors, especially the old couple, well, they're not a couple, but the two older people, just the look on their faces, that I think it sells it really well. Yeah, I would say the downsides of it, I don't think Thomas Jane sells the agony at it. His screams come off a little questionable, and some of his facial expressions, I don't know. And like I said, I think the timing is a bit contrived, but I like the idea of it, and it doesn't ruin the movie for me. But I think it was the right, because King has admitted, his ending in the novella was basically they get out, I think they end up at like a motel or something for the night, and they hear, like in the movie, I think Darabont, he translated this as, we see a giant creature walking in front of them. But in the book, they stop at this motel for the night or whatever it was, and they hear what they describe as the footsteps of God outside. So in the novella, for all you know, literally God is walking around causing this destruction. But they hear the footsteps of these giant footsteps outside. They go to sleep, and they wake up the next morning, and they keep going. Because King has admitted, basically, he didn't know how to end it. He just didn't have an ending in his head. So King has actually came out in strong support of this ending, and I think it's the right. I think it's for a film, at least. I think it works better than.
I think it definitely would work
Yeah.
better. I think obviously we can say if that ending would have been portrayed in the film, they just get to this motel and then we hear the sound outside or whatever, and then they get up and go on the next day. I mean, obviously it's a lot more ambiguous and it's more artsy, and probably appeals to all those
elevated horror fans
out there that are like, oh, did they make it out or did they not? Blah 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 blah.
What was that sound outside? Was that really God?
But I mean, I don't think every movie has to be like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I can enjoy elevated horror movies and I can enjoy ambiguous endings, but I don't think an ambiguous ending would have made this movie better.
I don't think I would have liked it. I agree with you. I like ambiguity in some scenarios, but I think for this movie, I think this ending actually works a lot better.
Yeah.
But that
it definitely. I think you're right. I think it works for the movie that was set up before it. So as opposed to what that ending would entail.
Yeah.
Because that ending seems more hopeful than the movie before it.
That ending is very. I don't say it's hopeful, but it leaves the door open, like maybe they
could survive or something.
And so I mean, Thomas Jane survives at the end of this movie, kind of. He's probably broken completely after that, but So overall, I think this is a pretty well written movie, and I think Frank Darabont. Obviously this isn't a masterclass in filmmaking like Shawshank or maybe even The Green Mile, but I think it's a really solid creature feature in terms of writing and direction. I think cinematography is also really good.
Definitely
some good shots. So anyway, we're ready to move on to creature design. Well, I guess we'll go through as in order that we saw them. The first thing we see is tentacles.
Tentacles? They're tentacles.
They are tentacles. I like how they open up.
They kind of look like like troglodyte things, like those prehistoric bug things.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I like how they kind of have
on the bottom they open up.
Yeah, they kind of have like a suction effect or something where they rip the skin off of you and everything.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
I think they're pretty cool. They might or might not be related to a creature we'll talk about later, but I think the tentacles are pretty cool. The next thing I think we see are the insects.
Yeah, big old bug things
with stingers.
They're like scorpions mixed with fly things.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They're interesting. They got weird looking faces. Like they have these two mandibles.
All of them, all of the faces on all the creatures that you see are weird.
Yeah.
Which is you only see like three of them, three of the creatures' faces, but they're weird.
And then the spiders, which I think are this.
Next we see the big giant pterodactyl thing.
Pterodactyl thing, yeah, which eat the insects.
They're weird bird-like creatures.
Pterodactyl looking things.
They have ugly faces too.
They have ugly faces.
They have like a more not like a traditional pterodactyl face, a long beak or whatever, more like a bird, but they have like this weird I don't know, kind of like acorny looking mouth. That,
yeah, it is weird.
I don't like it.
It's strange.
It's weird.
And then we had the spiders, which I think are the same basic CGI model as the insects, just with legs instead of wings. And bigger.
And like some weird spiky things on their backs.
Yeah. And they shoot like acidic
webs
or something. This scene, I had to say, is taken straight from Alien, where like you almost like they're strung up in web, like they are an alien. They're strung up with like the mucus stuff or whatever, and then you think like a chest burster is going to come out, but it's little baby spiders. Which I will say, we'll talk about the effects later, but it is. I hate spiders. Ooh, I hate spiders.
I don't like spiders either.
And baby spiders especially.
You ever accidentally crushed a spider with an egg sac on its back and you just see baby spiders go everywhere? It's horrifying.
It's gross and disgusting. And you're like,
ah! You're like, burn it down, it's over.
It's over, just get the match.
If they start crawling on your leg.
No.
Ooh.
That's too far.
Too far, yeah.
It'll make you paranoid the rest of the day that you have spiders crawling on you.
Yeah, definitely will.
You're like, oh no.
I think the next thing we see is the giant crab-looking thing that we kind of crept, shrouded, and missed, probably for the best. That gets him a couple times.
Yeah, it picks up Toby Jones' character of Ollie and eats him or
cuts him in half
or something. I don't know.
I mean, it's like it looks like kind of like a crab legs, but it's kind of like an upright body.
It's like praying mantis / with crab hands.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. I don't know.
It's interesting. I mean, we don't, like I said, it's head shrouded in the mist mostly. You don't really get a good look.
Shrouded in the mist.
But
and the last creature that we see.
And I think the last creature we see is the giant monster in this movie.
The reason we're viewing it.
Well, yeah, I guess kind of. But I mean, it's like a giant six-legged. It's kind of like a giant
six-legged cow.
Yeah. And it kind of looks like it has tentacles hanging off the bottom of it. It might be the tentacle creature from earlier, maybe.
Well, maybe.
You don't really know.
No confirmations.
No confirmation. It's kind of Lovecraftian. Like, it reminds me of the way.
Is it Cthulhu?
Is it Cthulhu? Everything's Cthulhu. As a whole, I think the creature design in this movie is pretty good. It's very otherworldly.
Yeah, they definitely.
I mean, they're definitely limited by their budget, but
we'll talk about that here in a minute.
I think it's very otherworldly.
They're all very weird looking.
Yeah,
I'll give them that. I mean, they're not bad creatures, but I mean, they're not like the best creatures that we've seen by any stretch.
Yeah, you mentioned at one point it gets very Stranger Thingsy.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, the military's come in and they've opened up a portal to another world, blah, 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 and these things are coming through, like, okay.
And some of these creatures kind of remind me of some Stranger Things.
Borrowed that. No.
Yeah. But getting into the budget, the CGI is suspect.
Yeah, the CGI is where this movie lags.
They definitely didn't have the money to pull off what they really,
I wish they could have found a way. I mean, I know in the credits, it says they used puppets. There were some puppeteers. Greg Nicotero was one of the puppeteers. I don't know exactly where they used the puppets.
There was a couple of scenes with the tentacles. After he cut off the tentacle, where the tentacle was, like a real prop.
Yeah, I wish that they would have found a way to use, without making it look cheesy, found a way to use practical effects for the majority of the creatures if they could, and not gone with this CGI if they could have helped it. That would have increased your budget, probably trying to come up with all those practical effects versus just rendering them in okay CGI.
Well, I mean, first of all, they only had $18 million, which is not a bad budget, but they had a lot of creatures to try to pull off. According to the credits, they used one effects.
Cafe effects. And
it's one of their, I don't even know, whatever, Cafe effects, whoever the hell that is. So, yeah, they definitely didn't have the money for good CGI, and it definitely hinders this movie. I bet if we watched the black and white version like Darabont wanted us to, it probably helps the effects. I'm not going to say it looks great.
Maybe it makes them look less glossy without the color.
Yeah, so, but I don't know that for sure. I mean, I'd have to watch it.
Get it and watch it, I guess.
But I'm not going to do that because the Blu-ray, they still...
It's out of print now.
It's out of print and you got to pay like $25 to get it. It's like... Not worth it.
It'll get re-released at some point in time.
Yeah,
sure.
There will be some giant Stephen King revival at some point, and everything will get re-released in 4K or something. But some stuff. But anyway, so yeah, effects could have been better. I do like some of the gore effects, some of the blood, and
the gore effects are actually pretty good. I mean, they pull them off really well with all the blood. The kid getting eaten by the tentacle things, it works really well.
Yeah,
the guy gets cut in half and it's just his legs attached to his
intestines.
It looks really good.
So
the effects, honestly, the effects of the spiders bursting out of the guy don't look terrible.
No.
Some shots didn't look terrible.
The spiders themselves look terrible.
Yeah.
And there's after the spiders burst out of him and you see his body laying there on the ground like exploded open. Yeah. It looks a little rough.
Yeah.
But them actually coming out of him doesn't look horrible.
Yeah. And, you know, the more shrouded in mist it is, the better the effects look. So there you go.
Yeah.
Shrouded in mist.
The mist.
Gorillas in the Mist? Oh, no, wrong movie. Anyway.
What is that?
What is that? Definitely not a movie for us to watch. But anyway, moving on to score. Like we mentioned,
I don't know what the score is in this movie.
I don't know what
I don't
Mark
really
Isham-
remember any music being in the movie until the end.
I tried to pay attention because I wanted to see what music. There is like one piece of music. I think it was like in the grocery store scene or something. That's not this track by the Dead Can Dance band. It's kind of brief, but yeah, they're really the only.
I mean, there's not enough score in this movie for them to even play it over the credits.
Yeah. They're really the only song
after this one piece of music by this band is over, they play military sounds, just helicopters and stuff.
Because they literally didn't have enough.
You didn't have enough music to put over. Like, I mean, most movies, you know, they play like one song or two songs from the soundtrack or whatever, like that have lyrics or whatever, and then they play the score the rest of the movie. Nothing.
No.
We got helicopters and military vehicles, stuff like that.
But I will say that this piece of music they got, the Host of Seraphim by Dead Can Dance, is like the perfect complement to this movie. It's very dark, very nihilistic, very depressing. I think it works really well for this movie because it plays while
it's like chanting, kind of.
After it plays as they leave the grocery store and as they're driving and they're losing all hope and everything. And I think it's a really haunting piece of music. I think it works really well. And then they play it over the credits again until it runs out, and then they play military tanks and helicopters and such, which is kind of funny. So I'm gonna say that they picked a really good piece of music, even if I don't know. I don't know this for sure. I don't know this for a fact. I feel like watching this movie, they were on a really tight time schedule. I feel like they didn't have a lot of time to work on the effects. They didn't have a lot of time to make music. I don't know. I just feel like they were. It just feels like they were on a really tight time schedule making this movie.
Maybe,
but
this movie was released by Dimension Films as well, so if that makes
the Weinstein brothers.
To anybody.
Let's just get to some final thoughts, please, before we get kicked off the airways.
Andrew,
what'd you think about our adventure into Stephen King world?
Well, it was all right. I enjoyed most of it. The effects were not all that well done for the monsters, but it was all right.
It's all right.
It's all right.
I'll give it a.
Just say it. A B? Okay.
All right, he gives it a B.
A B. Dylan, what did you think?
Overall, I think it's actually a pretty good movie. I think it's really well done. I think where this movie is lacking is definitely in the effects department. I wish they would have had a little bit more budget to work with to try to do something better with these effects, or like you said, maybe they were working with some sort of time constraint and they just didn't care enough to. Maybe the studio was like, okay, we'll give you this, but it's probably not going to make any money, so blah 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 blah. Yeah. Which, I mean, they're not necessarily wrong, but not necessarily right. I mean, it turned some sort of small profit, I'm assuming. But I wish they would have invested some more time or money into the effects to really help this movie out. I think had you improved the effects, this movie would even be better than it is. But this movie really is it's a character-driven movie with all the infighting going on between these two, I guess you can call them factions, I guess, that are taking place or developing in this grocery store, this very religious-y cult type thing going on with this lady who believes she's essentially a prophet, preaching about the end times, stuff like that, and then this other group who's trying to, maintain some sort of sanity and, hope of getting out. But overall, I mean, I think it's done really well. I really enjoy these character moments that we have. I mean, granted, there's a lot of characters, but I think we narrow it down by the end of the movie to a central few that you can follow and try to root for, even though the end is kind of dark and depressing. Yeah. But I like the ending of the movie. I mean, it doesn't hurt it. I think it works for the movie that's created before. I kind of like that moment you pointed out, when the color palette changes and it shifts from that very washed out, almost, black and gray, very muted color to the actual color starts flooding in. It's really cool to see. As the mist clears out, it slowly fades into more and more color, which is really nice. And the music, I don't necessarily know where it is, but the one piece of music that's featured very prominently is nice. I think it works really well with the movie. But overall, I think it's done really well. The acting is pretty good all the way around. I'm going to give it a B+.
All right, yeah, I agree with you. I like this. I like Darabont's take on what would happen if, a small group of people were trapped together in a claustrophobic space in a end of the world type scenario. And I think he pulls it off pretty well, showing just how quickly society breaks down and people turn on each other. And I like the performances in this movie by a bunch of known character actors. I like the tension, and I like the monster scenes in this movie for the most part. And I do like the ending, as divisive as it is. I think it matches this movie really well. I would say that I wish, like you said, I wish the effects would have been better, because I think it would have definitely made this film more tense, more exciting. Because sometimes when these effects are cheesy, it definitely takes the wind out of the movie cells.
Yeah, had they had the money, maybe they could have shown them more prominently at some certain points too, which would have been cool. But
although I do say, the oldest and most truest adage in storytelling: what you don't show the audience is always the most terrifying, because you can never show them something as scary as they can make up in their head. But no, I think despite the time and budget constraints, I think Darabont was able to pull off a pretty good movie. Like I said, it's not the masterclass in filmmaking like his previous two Stephen King adaptations were, but as far as creature features go, this is a really good creature feature. I think it's really tense, pretty horrific as far as these kind of things go. Good gore effects definitely to help it out. Good performances all around. It's definitely a lot better than that TV show. What is it? Was on TNT or whatever.
Something
that they try to make of it. I watched 2 episodes of that, and I could not do it. It was so bad. So don't watch that. If you're gonna watch something, watch this movie. So yeah, I agree with you. I think especially if I'm curving it on our little curve we do to kind of make these movies not all be in the C range. I'll give it a B+ as well. I actually think it's a good Stephen King. As far as Stephen King adaptations go, obviously Stephen King adaptations are very inconsistent, and I say there are a lot more bad ones than there are good ones. I think this is definitely a pretty good one. It's I don't know if it'd be top 10, but it'd be definitely top 20. I'd have to sit here and list them out and try to remember all of them that are good. But I think it's a pretty well done Stephen King adaptation by a very competent director, and I enjoy it quite a bit. So that being said, don't have a whole lot of news. As of July 1st, I think I mentioned this in our Ultraman episode that me and Andrew did, all the Gamera films are now streaming on Arrow's video channel, on Arrow Video's channel, whatever. Project
some sort of streaming service now?
Yeah, today is a streaming service. I think they're actually doing, if they're still doing it, they'd had like some kind of special 30-day free trial going because of the Corona thing or something.
That's cool. If
you wanted to just do the free trial and watch the Gamer movies if you don't have any other way to watch them. I was going to mention that the final trailer they put out before they put them on their video service, I made Dylan watch it before we recorded this. It is very epic.
Yes. It's definitely a more modern trailer. I'm pretty sure they just stole some sort of trailer music from whatever big blockbuster has been coming out over the last 10 years.
Well, they didn't steal it. It's by a group called Audio Machine.
Is it actually by them?
Yeah, it's by them. They
specialize in trailer music.
They make trailer music, and then they sell the licenses off for it to studios to put on there. So I'm sure they bought it off of them. I had heard this song because I downloaded the album that it's from, because it's from the same album that the song "So Say We All," which was the trailer music on the first Endgame trailer. So, but it's definitely epic, and it definitely, I think the people that were in charge of editing this trailer together, they took some of the best footage that they could,
edited it together with the music really
from
well.
all 12 films, and they matched it to the music really well, and I think it's actually
definitely makes
really
it look way more cool than it's gonna be.
Yeah. You know what? I said that as a joke. I will actually say right here now that I think the final 4 Gamer movies are all 4 really good movies. Now, the first 8 Showa era films, we'll talk about them, but it is what it is.
We'll talk about them in a year. No.
And I think we're going to start that in November or something. But anyway, I think I mentioned this a couple episodes ago. The physical collection actually comes out on August 28th, I believe. So lots of fun there. I know there was some updates on the Godzilla vs. Kong prequel comic. It's going to be coming out sometime, and it's going to be told entirely from Godzilla's perspective and leading up to his clash with Kong. So that'll be coming soon. It's a graphic novel, I guess, not a comic, but whatever. Whatever. And the Ultraman Marvel comic collaboration is coming out pretty soon. They released some like cover art for it, and I don't know if I'm going to buy it because Marvel comics are expensive. But it looks like it might be pretty fun if you like that kind of stuff. But aside from that, I think that's all the news we have for you this week. I guess next week we will return with Godzilla, Godzilla Tokyo S.O.S. to be precise, as we're continuing the final days of the Millennium era. 2 more films, which, just, 6 years ago, that would have been the end of the Godzilla, but in 6 years, they've pumped out 5 more movies. So, about to be 6. So, yeah, that is what it is. But if you want to listen to us talk about other films, not monster related, maybe a little more in the vein of The Mist, we have a YouTube channel.
We do have a YouTube channel, DNA Productions. It's on YouTube, obviously, as Aaron just said. Over there, we review more mainstream movies. If new releases ever will come out, we'll review those as well. Currently, this week's episode will be the wrap-up of our Indiana Jones series that we did, all 4 of those films. And then I believe we're going to do Quiet Place this next week in anticipation for A Quiet Place Part 2 if it ever comes out in September, hopefully.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out. Other than that, we got a couple series planned, Halloween retrospective, and a couple other things in the works. Yep. So keep a lookout for that.
That is correct. And if you want to contact us regarding this podcast, you can contact us at stompthisway1954@gmail.com.
For sure. If you want to follow us on our social medias, we're up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're at Stomp This Way on all those platforms. Make sure you give us a like or a follow, and be sure to tell your friends about us.
That's right. We also have a website. Andrew, where can they find that website?
You can find that website at www.stompthisway@podbean.com.
For sure. Close enough?
Close enough. I think you get it.
I think they got it.
Okay. And we also, on that website, you can find our full schedule of events.
Subject to change.
Grades for those previous films that we've done, as well as backlog episodes, news and updates from the giant monster world.
Yeah.
Anything else important?
I don't think so necessarily. If you're listening from the United States of America, I hope you had a fun and a safe 4th of July.
That's right. I only had one incident.
Andrew only tried to kill and blow Aaron up once.
I only went deaf in my left ear for a couple hours. We're fine now.
Hopefully nobody else had that issue.
Yeah. But also, I just wanted to remind you guys, as you probably already know, if you're listening to this, Andrew and I published our last Ultraman movie review. Was that last week before last?
Yeah.
And as soon as we finish Gaia, we're gonna do our next one, Ultraman Tiga: The Final Odyssey.
I'm sorry.
I'm kind of excited about it because I loved Tiga, and I'm glad to. I want to revisit the cast of Tiga. So yeah, screw you, Dylan. But anyway, and the 3rd episode of Ultraman Z is now streaming on YouTube for you to watch if you want to watch it. But anyway, aside from that, I think that's all we had for you this week. Don't forget to join us next week for Godzilla Tokyo S.O.S. As always, I'm Aaron.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Dylan, and we'll catch you in the next one.